Hi there, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Anita Adefiye. I am on a mission to undo the culture of silence on matters that we really should be talking about. And for me, I have focused a little bit more on mental health and sexual violence and pretty much anything else in between because those are not topics that just are standalone necessarily. There's a lot of things that go into that. So that's my goal, and I create awareness. I provide education through my YouTube videos and my website, loudsilences.org. Feel free to check it out. There are lots of very informative write-ups there that you would find useful for yourself, for your loved ones, and just for people around you, same as the videos. So thank you for joining me on this journey, and thank you for continuing to watch the videos. For those of you that share, thank you so much. I really appreciate. But much more, I do believe that people that you share them with appreciate them as well, because these are things that can help people, and they do help people. These are things that I wish that when I was going through certain things, I had access to. So thank you for being part of this journey with me, and for lending your voice to those that need help. So without much ado, I'm just going to talk about what I'm here to talk about today, and that is how to help your loved ones if you see these signs. And what signs am I referring to here? Those signs were talked about in my last video. I encourage you to check it out if you haven't, or feel free to check it out just for a refresher. I know it's been a while. And these are societal signs that we need to look out for people, that we need to look out for in people around us. I appreciate the feedback, by the way, that I received on those videos. They're really encouraging when I hear people's feedback, so thank you. And in that video, I promised to tell you several things that also help people around you should you notice those signs. So today I will be sharing 7 tips on how to help your loved ones if they are suicidal, or if you notice anyone around you who may be. But before I get into the 7 items, I just want to share quickly that barely 2 days after that video went live, I woke up to the news of a young man in his early 20s who had committed suicide at my alma mater, and through poisoning. And somewhere between the timing of that news and where I had talked about somewhere between the timing of that news, which is right after a video where I had addressed this, and the fact that it was in the same school I had been at, made me furious. And why? Because at the same school I also tried to commit suicide. Nothing related to the school per se. For me, it was all very personal issues, but it made me really furious because I realized that there is an urgency for us to just stop being silent, and we cannot continue to be comfortable with the silence and culture of secrecy, and we cannot keep trivializing these things. We cannot keep crying over spilled milk when there is an incident like that. We cry, we talk about it, we feel bad, we feel sad. Same with the recent case of the death of a young girl who was violently raped, and the video of the one who was being molested, and had gone through it. We can't keep crying over these things and then go right back to doing nothing. I mean, that has to stop. We've been in that cycle for too long, and that has to stop. And more importantly, we cannot keep silencing our young ones to their graves. It is completely unacceptable. People need help, and they can't even, open up to ask for help, because there is a culture that tells us that if you're depressed, or that if you're mentally sick, then something is wrong with you. No, nothing is wrong with you. You are sick and you need help, and that's what it is. Just as someone who has a headache needs help, just as someone who has cancer needs help, someone who has mental health challenges, they also need help. They're sick and they need help, and we cannot keep demonizing these things in a way that make people want to shut in and kill themselves rather than open up and reach out for the help that they need. So it's a little touchy for me, and I apologize if this feels a little strong. Um, but we can't keep being silent about these things. That's the point. All that being said, I promised you 7 tips to help with people around you if you notice any signs of depression or suicide around them. So, tip number one, um, that I'll be sharing today is assess the people around you, assess them for risk of suicide or self-harm. So if you notice the signs of suicide around a loved one, assess them. And the easiest way to do this really is just to ask a really blunt question. Questions like, are you thinking about suicide? Do you want to kill yourself? Do you have plans? More often times, people who are going to commit suicide are already thinking about the plans on how to commit the suicide. It's called suicide ideation, right? They're thinking of the ideas that they can put out, that they can try as options to kill themselves. So ask them bluntly, are you self-harming? If someone is suicidal, chances are that they are self-harming. I still have scars from some of the times that I used to self-harm. All right. And I know you're probably thinking, well, that doesn't make any sense. What if they were not suicidal and me asking these questions only make them suicidal? Apparently, research shows that there is very likely chances that if someone isn't suicidal and you ask them those questions, it will make them suicidal. On the contrary, if you ask them and they are suicidal, then you just took up the chances of helping them, saving them by 50%. And if you don't ask them, you don't get that chance at all. You're always better off asking the question than not. All right. So, and if it is a child who is involved and you ask, depending on what your answer is, I strongly recommend that you get a parent of that child or a guardian of the child involved. Okay. Tip number 2 to help someone who may be showing signs of suicide is to listen to them with love, compassion, and empathy. All right. This kind of follows through a sequence that is really great. And the 7 tips follows through a sequence that is really great. And stay with me and you'll understand why in a moment here. If they do tell you what is going on with them, you want to listen with compassion, love, and empathy. No judgments and no flaring up. Parents, I have to warn parents, especially here. Nobody wants to hear their child is depressed. Nobody wants to hear their child is suicidal. But the truth is, unfortunately, it happens. When I was suicidal, I was 17. Actually, started way before then. But the first time I actually made a real attempt to follow through with my plans, I was 17. If you had told my parents, well, I didn't even have them anymore at that time, but if they were around and you had told them I was suicidal, they wouldn't have liked it either. So I get it. No parent wants to hear that. But unfortunately, sometimes that's the case. But if you hear anything, it's not the time to get upset and yell at them. It's the time to listen with compassion, love, and empathy, and just find a way to manage your emotions that you're feeling, help them get through what they need to get through, and then deal with your emotions. Deal with your own emotions as well, okay? But whatever you do, just hear, listen, show compassion, and no judgments. And sometimes what people really need is an opportunity to unburden, and it brings relief. It may not bring complete restoration of wanting to leave, but in the moment it may bring relief. So just listen and give someone a chance to unburden to you. Tip number 3 is to reassure them, reaffirm, and inform. And what do I mean by this? So one of the reasons that people go to the extreme of suicide is because they see no hope. All they see is a dead end. And more often than not, they don't see any use in themselves being alive anymore. And so they want to end it. Pretty much they want to solve the problems by, dealing with it permanently. All right. What reassurance does is it helps them realize that this is temporary and it will pass. Now, how you're saying this is really important. They need hope. Be a source of it. All right. Again, no judgment in your tone or your body language. So watch yourself. All right. And then the reason that sometimes a lot of people, especially young people, want to commit suicide is because they feel worthless. You reaffirm. All right. Whatever, if you're able to get to some of the things that are bothering them, you reaffirm them. If it's feelings of unworthiness that is causing it, a little reaffirmation about their worthiness would really help. It won't solve it right away on the spot, but it can help. All right. But it's a continuous thing you do. All right. You constantly reassure, reaffirm, and then you inform them. You inform them of where and how they can get help. All right. There are for some kids, they might open up to you, and you may not be a parent to them, but inform them to get the parents involved. If you have the opportunity and the relationship, if you don't have the relationship to have that conversation with the parent, I ask you, please, I have been burnt by this. Find someone who has that relationship and let them bridge the gap in that conversation. This is a mistake that I have made. Never do that. Don't try to engage the parent directly if they don't give you the opportunity to, or if you are not sure that you have that relationship with them to communicate. Okay, but get someone else involved if you can. All right, so inform them of where and how they can get help. For those who are in the part of the world where I live in Canada, depending on how critical it is, you may need to call 911. And if it's not so critical, there are suicide line helps that you can also call. I'll leave some of the links to this information in the description below. And if you are in places like my home country, Nigeria, where you may not get a lot of help, calling whatever the equivalent of 911 is, there is even a number to call. But whatever the case is, there are lots of nonprofit organizations that are doing great work. Again, I'll put a link to where you can find information on some of these organizations, but they're really helpful, and you can inform your loved ones to reach out and get help, or if need be, reach out on their behalf as well. Tip number 4, do not try to trivialize their pain. We all have different thresholds for pain. And besides that, you or someone you know went through similar and did not commit suicide does not mean that you are strong and that the other person is weak. No, it just means that you're two completely different human beings who process pain differently. So reaffirm and reassure them, but please never trivialize the reality of their pain. It's their reality, not yours. Okay, tip number 5, help them develop a suicide crisis plan. Now, for anyone who is suicidal, there may be a time when the feeling to end their lives become more overpowering than at other times. All right, and like any other crisis, it can be de-escalated. All right, it can be de-escalated. I have, I know at some point for me, when the suicide started rearing its ugly head again, one of the things that I did was write down reasons that I have to leave. Now, I didn't understand what was even going on with me at the time. That's a whole conversation. But one of the things that I did was write down reasons that I had to leave. And every time those feelings came, I will just revisit that list, and I'll go over it again and again and again and again until the feeling to leave, started to resurface again. So you want to make sure that you help them if they open up to you. You want to work with them to develop a suicide crisis plan. When those moments come, now different things might work for different people. So it's a conversation you may have with them to understand what works. One other thing that I know I usually would do is I had people who I would just randomly text and say, hey, pray for me. I didn't even tell them what they were praying about. I just said, pray for me. Some of them, I felt them. Trust me, there were times I felt some of them. I knew they were praying for me, because suddenly I would find strength. Suddenly someone would say something and it would just, light up a light in me, and that really helped. So come up with a crisis plan to de-escalate when those feelings rear their ugly heads again. And yes, it can even be sometimes just very simple distraction tools or techniques. Someone to call in those moments. It can even be things like not being alone or not keeping sharp or deadly objects around you, or whatever it is. Find what works, but keep it close by. Tip number 6 to help your loved ones if you find them exhibiting signs of suicide is to regularly check up on them. If you're not in the same location as they are, physical location, then you want to check up regularly through text message, phone calls, words of encouragement. Every now and then, they go a long way. And if you are in the same physical location as they are, talk to them in ways that doesn't feel encroaching. Talk to them, all right, and put things in their path that makes them know that you are with them, you are for them. Okay, and these things might sound very simple, but for someone who is feeling like there is no light at the end of the tunnel that they find themselves in, they can go a long way. You can be that light for them. Tip number 7, and lastly, and this is probably the most important, especially to me, because from personal experience and watching others do this for me and doing it for others, I find that everything from tip number 1 to 6 might fail. As a matter of fact, for some people, they have failed. But with tip number 7, you can never go wrong. And that is to pray for them and pray with them if you get the chance to. All right, there's just something about the power of God that really just goes in to break down everything that isn't, that shouldn't be there, that is there. All right, it breaks down the walls and barriers. People who are suicidal, they do have walls that they set up, and sometimes nothing else gets through. All right, do number 1 to 6 by all means, please do. Faith without works is dead. Do it, and do it with so much love and compassion in your heart. But do number 7 equally with love and compassion in your heart. Pray for them. If you're with them, pray with them. All right, I believe strongly in this. Regularly praying for strength for someone who is suicidal goes a long way. And every time you talk with them, either on the phone or you speak to them, pray with them. All right, don't think it's always all completely normal. All right, sometimes there's scientific names for things, doesn't always mean that it's science. And honestly, I wish science people would know this. But we cannot erase and we cannot erase spiritual connotations to some of these things. No matter how much you want to be rational, some things just don't make sense to the human mind. It's that plain and simple. All right, prayer also helps create the right environment and shines light into every darkness. Being suicidal is a place of darkness. I would know, I have been there. All right, so those are my 7 tips for you today. Is there anything else that you think you'd like to add to the list, or something that you've tried or you've helped your loved ones walk through? Feel free to share. I'd love to hear about them. If you are struggling with suicidal thoughts, please reach out. People are more willing to help than we know. Reach out, talk to someone, ask someone. If you're in this part of the world, call 911. But please, as someone who has been suicidal, to someone else who might be suicidal, I just want to say that honestly speaking, truly speaking, the things we feel in those moments truly are temporary. And I know it doesn't feel like it. You don't really want to take your life. You just want the pain to end. And one of the ways to make sure that pain ends is to open up about it. Don't get silent on it. Your silence only makes it worse. Open up to someone about it. And when you open up, please give them the opportunity to help you. So I really hope that this stands out. This has really been helpful. If you like the video, please let me know. Give it a thumbs up. Also share, because these things, they can save a life. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you.